I was standing there doing absolutely nothing heroic when it happened. No speeches. No dramatic lighting. Just me, a borrowed uniform that never quite fit right, and a crowd of beings who had perfected the art of staring without blinking. The kind of staring that made you wonder if you had food on your face or if your species had evolved something deeply offensive without telling you. She was the reason the staring stopped feeling abstract and started feeling personal. She leaned in slightly, head tilted, eyes tracing the vague outline that the fabric failed to hide as well as the tailor had promised. Her expression wasn't lustful. It wasn't mocking either. It was analytical, like someone noticing an unexpected pattern in a math problem. Then she smiled, slow and bright, and said it. Exotic. Just one word. Calm. Clear. Loud enough that everyone within conversational distance heard it. There was a collective intake of breath around us. I could feel it. The kind of silence that forms when people expect something to shatter. I recognized it instantly. I'd seen that pause before in 100 human contexts. Locker rooms. Medical exams. Bad jokes at worse parties. The moment when the world leans forward, waiting for embarrassment to bloom. I was supposed to look away. Maybe flush. Maybe stammer. That's what she was expecting. That's what they all were. Instead, I shrugged. Yeah, I said. We get that a lot. The silence didn't break. It cracked. Her smile froze, not because I was rude, but because I hadn't reacted correctly. Her pupils widened, just a fraction, like her brain had reached for a familiar response and found an empty drawer. Somewhere behind her, a translator drone made a faint recalibration noise, as if even it wasn't sure that sentence had been used properly. You get that, she repeated slowly. All the time, I said. Depending on who's asking, anyway. That was when the murmuring started. Soft, overlapping sounds, clicks and whispers, and the faint hiss of languages not designed for human throats. I could almost hear the collective recalculation happening in real time. She straightened, studying my face now instead of anything else, like maybe she'd misidentified the source of the anomaly. That was not intended as an insult, she said carefully. I figured, I replied. If it were, you'd have tried harder. A few nearby aliens recoiled. One choked on a drink. She, on the other hand, laughed. Not the polite diplomatic kind either. It slipped out of her, surprised and musical, and she covered it with one elegant hand as if embarrassed by her own reaction. Fascinating, she said. There it was. That word carried weight. Curiosity sharpened by confusion. She'd expected discomfort, maybe even offense. What she'd gotten instead was something far worse from a scientific standpoint, indifference edged with confidence. You are aware, she continued, circling slightly as if to view me from another angle, that most species respond to such observations with visible stress responses. Sure, I said. Some humans do too. Usually the younger ones. Or the ones who haven't been roasted by their friends yet. Roasted, she echoed. Verbally, I added. Mostly. That earned another pause. Her gaze flicked to my face again, searching for deception, irony, something to anchor this interaction in her expectations. She didn't find it. I wasn't posturing. I wasn't defensive. I wasn't proud either. I just existed. Comfortably. That confidence, she said slowly, is highly irregular. I laughed. I couldn't help it. You should see us on bad hair days. That was when her curiosity shifted. I could see it. The way her posture changed, less evaluative, more inquisitive. Whatever category she'd initially filed me under had been quietly discarded. This wasn't about bodies anymore. Not really. You do not appear concerned, she said. About comparison. Judgment. Scrutiny. Why would I be? I asked. You didn't say anything I haven't heard before. Different words, maybe. Better lighting. She frowned, genuinely now. But such commentary is meant to establish social positioning. Oh, I said. Then yeah, you definitely overestimated its power. Around us, the crowd leaned in. Not physically, not all of them, but attention has weight, and I could feel it pressing closer. I was dimly aware that I had become something like an exhibit. A live demonstration of a variable they hadn't accounted for. You are comfortable, she said, almost to herself, with being observed. We grow up that way, I said. Everyone's got an opinion. If you let it get to you every time, you never leave the house. Her eyes locked onto mine. That is, not how most civilizations function. Yeah, I said. We've noticed. For a moment neither of us spoke. The station's ambient hum filled the space between us, punctuated by the distant thrum of engines and the quiet scribbling of someone taking notes they hadn't planned on taking today. Finally, she smiled again. This one was different. Less confident. More intrigued. I intended to study your biology, she admitted. But I believe I may have identified a more compelling subject. Careful, I said. That kind of curiosity gets you invited to human holidays. She tilted her head. Is that a threat? Only to your productivity, I said. She laughed again, softer this time, and I realized something then. She hadn't just expected me to feel small. She'd expected that reaction to confirm something fundamental about humans. Instead, all she'd done was reveal a question she didn't know how to answer yet. Why weren't we ashamed? And more importantly, how had we survived long enough to stop caring? Her curiosity didn't retreat after the initial shock. It expanded, spiraled, multiplied in ways that were equal parts scientific intrigue and personal obsession. She hovered around me now, no longer expecting the usual flustered responses that most species produced. Instead, she was confronted with calm. Not arrogance, not dismissal, just the kind of casual self-assurance that humans carried like a well-worn jacket. She circled, tilted her head, and I could almost see the mental gears turning. Every species she'd studied had predictable patterns of embarrassment, outrage, or at least polite deflection. Humans? Humans just shrugged and laughed. I do not understand, she said, pacing slowly, her voice a melody of syllables unfamiliar to my ears but fully translatable by the omnipresent translator drones. Why are you not distressed? Why is there no evidence of shame? Shame is optional, I replied, leaning back against the railing, arms crossed. We try it out when it's useful, but mostly we figure embarrassment is just wasted energy. Her eyes narrowed. Wasted energy? In the presence of a potentially judgmental observer? That defies social evolutionary logic. Guess we're evolutionary rebels, I said. We like to experiment, even with our own social discomfort. Around us, her colleagues whispered in clicks and hums, scanning me as if I were an unusual specimen in a controlled lab experiment. It was surreal. On most worlds, I would have been the center of an escalating awkwardness storm. Here, I was the anomaly, the human variable that no one had been able to predict. They didn't even need to touch me. Observation alone was enough to drive their curiosity into overdrive. You explain your behavior with humor, she continued. Is that a defense mechanism? Depends on the day, I said. Sometimes humor is a shield, sometimes it's a weapon, sometimes it's just for fun. Humans like fun. I grinned. It keeps us sane when everyone else is trying to categorize us. She made a faint clicking sound, which I interpreted as confusion, or maybe fascination, or maybe the alien equivalent of a deep sigh. Your species appears resilient, adaptive, emotionally stable beyond anticipated limits. Yet you are not immune to observation. Observing's fine, I said. Most humans do it all the time. We're curious creatures. We check each other out, study behavior, make jokes. Sometimes we even take bets on what someone will do next. It's like a sport. She blinked, an alien blink, slow and deliberate, as if processing that last sentence required recalibrating her entire neurological model. A sport of observation? Exactly, I said. And if you're really good, you survive social embarrassment with your dignity mostly intact. Sometimes better. Sometimes worse. Depends on the team you're playing with. Her lips, if they could be called that, curved slightly, betraying that she was losing her composure, not because she found me attractive, but because her expectations were crumbling. She had anticipated discomfort, humiliation, anxiety, even fear. What she found instead was confidence without conceit, curiosity without desperation, and humor without malice. It wasn't arrogance. It was clarity. It was human. I have never encountered this, she whispered, almost to herself. Most civilizations collapse under scrutiny of this intensity. Most individuals respond with heightened cortisol levels. Maybe we just don't sweat the small stuff, I said. Humans have been around long enough to see everything go wrong anyway. You get used to it. Her fingers, or the closest equivalent, brushed an invisible pattern in the air as she processed this. And yet you remained composed. You do not seek to conceal your anatomy as would be expected. There is no visible sign of internalized distress. Visibility is overrated, I said. If you're comfortable with yourself, you don't need to broadcast it. And if you're not, well, people notice anyway. Might as well laugh. I caught her off guard when I added, think of it like armor. But invisible. And light. And washable. I smiled, and she tilted her head, analyzing me like I had just described some exotic technology. Maybe I had. Maybe humans were the tech. Or the anomaly. Or both. She took a step closer. Your psychology is baffling. There is no recorded data supporting a species maintaining composure while displaying non-defensive openness in this context. Welcome to the Human Handbook, I said. Chapter 1, Don't freak out over compliments or insults. Chapter 2, Make jokes. Chapter 3, Profit emotionally. Her eyes widened slightly at the last part, perhaps mistaking the term, profit, for some form of material gain rather than emotional equilibrium. I didn't bother correcting her. Misunderstandings were part of the fun. You must experience internal conflict, she insisted. Some part of you should be alarmed. Oh, we do, I said. But we're trained to laugh at it. That way, everyone else does too. Helps with survival. Works on the playground, works on the battlefield, works when aliens call your anatomy exotic. She exhaled a sound somewhere between disbelief and amusement. Your species is confounding. I am compelled to observe further. You're welcome, I said, leaning casually. But fair warning, the more you study, the more you realize humans aren't just about what you see. We're about how we see ourselves, and how stubborn we are about it. Her gaze lingered on me, analyzing, recalculating. The curiosity that began with anatomy had shifted completely to psychology, to mindset, to the invisible armor humans carried through every culture, every insult, every challenge, every compliment we shrugged off with ease. That, apparently, was far more exotic than any measurement of bones or skin. And somewhere in her fascination, I sensed she had stopped expecting embarrassment and started expecting confusion. Which, in human terms, was perfectly normal. We thrived in it. We even enjoyed it. By now, the ripple effect had started. What began as a casual exchange between one alien and one human had turned into a full-blown spectacle of interstellar curiosity. Panels of xenopsychologists, diplomatic observers, and several overly enthusiastic interns hovered nearby, taking notes, clicking pens, and muttering in languages I couldn't begin to identify. It was clear that my presence had become a variable that threatened to rewrite their entire understanding of social dynamics. Somewhere, someone had probably activated a holographic chart titled, Human Emotional Response, Anomaly or Species Trait? The alien beauty that started it all was still close, orbiting my personal space with a combination of admiration, bafflement, and academic panic. She had traded the word, exotic, for something far more terrifying. How does your confidence remain unshaken under observation? The question was whispered, yet it carried the gravity of a legal indictment in her mind. She had apparently gathered a committee to track every twitch, every shrug, every smirk I made. "They're calling it a psychological irregularity," I said casually to a nearby observer, who blinked several times in unison with a colleague. "Apparently, humans aren't supposed to enjoy being noticed." I paused to let it sink in. "We also apparently enjoy paperwork, but that's classified as recreational in some circles." The crowd of aliens shifted uneasily, as if I'd just introduced a subatomic paradox into a well-ordered physics equation. They started whispering, clicking, gesturing. Scientific panic had clearly set in. A few of them tried to replicate the scenario with their own species members, likely expecting someone else to break first. No one did. It was as if I had inadvertently become a model for a new type of galactic sociology experiment, and humans were unknowingly rewriting the rulebook. "Observe the laughter response," said the alien beauty, consulting a small device projecting colorful graphs midair. "Notice how he integrates humor to deflect social pressure without producing the predicted stress hormones." She tilted her head, clearly frustrated that her data didn't match her expectations. "Why do you enjoy this? Why do you not react negatively?" I shrugged. "Enjoyment? Not exactly. Humor keeps things light. Helps people stay sane. Plus, it's fun to see the chaos you guys make when nothing actually bothers me." A few panels of junior analysts immediately began furiously writing notes, scribbling phrases like, "Emotional resilience exceeds expected thresholds," and "Laughter as adaptive defense mechanism." One particularly nervous alien raised a hand and asked, "But if observed by multiple parties simultaneously, does the effect compound into distress?" I smiled. "Not really. Humans kind of normalize it. The more eyes, the more we laugh. You'd be amazed how predictable your shock can be when you expect humans to blush. Makes for a good interspecies spectator sport." Her lips, well, whatever the alien equivalent was, curved in what could only be interpreted as exasperation mixed with intrigue. "You are intentionally unpredictable." She gestured to the others taking notes. "They cannot quantify you. The variables exceed anticipated ranges. This is not normal. Normal's overrated," I said. "Trust me. It keeps life interesting. Also, helps with diplomacy and dating. Not that you need the advice." She blinked, then turned to the panel. "Recommend further monitoring. All attempts at inducing typical stress responses have failed." She pointed to me, gesturing at what appeared to be a human equivalent of a thumbs up. "He remains calm, engaging, and culturally entertaining under all conditions." From somewhere behind her, someone whispered, "Dangerous." "Exactly," I replied, barely suppressing a grin. "We're dangerous because we don't fold under pressure. We adapt. We make jokes about it. And apparently, we drive entire alien civilizations to the brink of analytical hysteria." A group of interns exchanged nervous signals that I assumed were the alien equivalent of, "Are we supposed to file a report now?" The alien beauty sighed, exhaling a sound somewhere between amusement and disbelief. She tried insults, awkward commentary, subtle gestures, even staged demonstrations intended to provoke modesty. None of it worked. I was calm, collected, entirely indifferent to the expected shame, and most importantly, entirely human in the way she couldn't compute. "You are comfortable in a manner that is incomprehensible," she admitted softly. "How is it possible for one species to maintain composure under constant social observation?" I leaned against the console, mimicking the most casual posture I could muster. "You just get used to it. Thousands of years of cultural critique, evolution, and random chaos have a way of teaching you to shrug and smile. Plus, humans are stubborn. Once we decide we're not bothered, no amount of alien scrutiny changes that." Her gaze lingered, searching for hidden defenses, secret discomfort, anything that would explain this anomaly. The audience, now fully invested, scribbled faster. Some were even quietly checking against historical records, looking for precedent. I suspected they wouldn't find any. "I believe," she said finally, voice quieter, as if speaking aloud might disrupt her mental calculations. That your species has evolved a form of psychological armor. Emotional resilience beyond anticipated parameters. Observational tolerance beyond predicted thresholds. Call it human stubbornness, I said with a grin. Call it habit. Call it an occupational hazard. Either way, it works, her colleagues murmured. One of them attempted a demonstration, subtly suggesting that another human might react with embarrassment. I shrugged again. It's individual, mostly. Some humans might freeze. Some might faint. But if you're like me, you just keep standing there. Smiling. Observing back. The alien beauty stepped closer again. Your humor, your composure, it is destabilizing. Entire protocols are failing simply because you refuse to react as predicted. I didn't mean to destabilize, I said. It just happens naturally. I mean, think about it. Your species studies patterns, right? Well, humans are weirdly good at ignoring patterns when it comes to themselves. Makes life more interesting. She tilted her head and exhaled a clicking sound that I took as resignation. The human species is fundamentally unpredictable. Emotionally dangerous. Socially unquantifiable. Exactly, I said. And that's why you keep watching. Because curiosity doesn't die easy when you've never seen anything like it before. By now, the panels were recording, streaming, and cross-referencing every movement, every smirk, every shrug I had made since she first called me exotic. Somewhere, in the chaos of clicks and hisses and whispers, it dawned on her. This was bigger than anatomy. This was bigger than charm. This was a human trait that no algorithm, no observational study, no carefully constructed model could ever fully predict. Confidence born of familiarity with life, humor born of endurance, and resilience born of centuries of chaos. And she wanted to understand it all. By the time the observation panels had finished recalibrating, she was no longer looking at me like a subject of study. She was looking at me like someone had just handed her a puzzle with missing pieces and then dared her to make sense of it. The alien beauty's earlier focus on anatomy, the word that had started the chaos, had shifted entirely. Now, her curiosity was on the human mind, the confidence, the humor, the ability to exist under scrutiny without cracking. And apparently it was far more exotic than anything she had ever catalogued. She stepped closer, her presence radiating both fascination and frustration. I believed your species' resilience would be limited to observable behavior, she admitted, almost reluctantly. I underestimated the depth, the internal consistency, the audacity to remain unshaken. I shrugged, the universal human gesture. We get called audacious a lot. Usually when people try to predict our reactions and fail spectacularly. She studied me for a long moment, and I could see her struggle to categorize what she was experiencing. Most species she'd encountered had predictable layers: shame, pride, embarrassment, competitiveness. But humans were messy, self-assured in unexpected ways, yet utterly charming in their unpredictability. I thought your body was exotic, she said softly, almost as if confessing. But the more I observe, the more I realize the real anomaly is. Her gaze trailed from my form to my relaxed posture, to the way I smiled even when under intense scrutiny. It is the mind. The confidence. The attitude. Guess you could say the rest of us is just icing, I said, grinning. Humans spend a lot of time being ridiculous, but if you can keep your cool through all of it, the rest tends to fall into place. Her lips, or whatever the alien equivalent was, curved into something close to a smile, a mixture of admiration, bemusement, and disbelief. Dangerous, she murmured, almost to herself. This confidence is dangerous. Entire social hierarchies could crumble if more individuals exhibited such behavior. Welcome to Earth, I said. We've been practicing for millennia. Wars, politics, family dinners, it all adds up. You either develop a sense of humor, or you develop wrinkles in odd places. She tilted her head, as if weighing my words against centuries of research, against evolutionary charts, against protocols designed to predict and control behavior. None of it mattered. None of it explained the casual composure that humans carried into every situation. And the more she observed, the more she realized she was learning something profound. The most exotic thing in the galaxy wasn't physiology. It was psychology. You do not fear judgment, she said. You do not seek approval. You thrive in unpredictability. That's one way to put it, I said. Another way? We're stubborn, we make jokes, and we've seen enough chaos that nothing surprises us for long. Either you learn to shrug or you get buried by everyone else's expectations. She exhaled, a soft sound, and for a moment she looked almost human in her perplexity. I believed, that confidence required perfection, flawlessness, control. But you, her gaze lingered on me. You achieve it despite imperfection. Because you accept it. Because you embrace it. Because you are comfortable in your own skin. I chuckled. Comfortable in our own skin? That's one of the nicer ways to put it. We're also occasionally ridiculous, stubborn, loud, and occasionally unintentionally terrifying. Her eyes sparkled, or something akin to that. I underestimated your species. Entirely. And yet I feel compelled to understand. Not your anatomy. Not your physical form. Your mind. Your essence. She paused, searching for a word that translated properly. Your humanity. I nodded. Yep. That's the stuff people don't usually study. It's messy. But it works. The panels behind her continued to record, buzzing softly with the realization that their data models were failing. Observations, charts, stress tests, none of them could account for what they were witnessing. And it was all because humans didn't respond the way anyone expected. Not with fear, not with shame, not with hesitation. We responded with humor, curiosity, and a confidence that made the galaxy pause and take notice. You called my anatomy exotic, I said finally, letting the words hang in the air. Turns out, it was my attitude you were fascinated by all along. She tilted her head, processing, blinking slowly, and for the first time, I saw her smile fully. Not polite, not academic, but genuine. Warm and odd and slightly disarmed. Yes, she admitted. That is extraordinary. That is truly exotic. I laughed softly. Glad we cleared that up. Makes the research a lot more fun for both of us, doesn't it? And as she nodded, finally stepping back just enough to regain her composure, I realized something important. Humans weren't exotic because of anatomy, technology, or strength. Humans were exotic because of resilience, humor, self-acceptance, confidence in the face of absurdity. And that, apparently, was more intimidating and more fascinating than anything else in the galaxy.